We are recording this. I will edit out all of the talking prior to. We'll start when I welcome you, and it begins. It's about 5:10. I feel okay starting as long as everyone here is okay starting early.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone. Again, I played the game rules. I said the game rules. We have Ted Weinberg here, who's running for Mercer Island City Council. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us. You are our last one. We're so excited. I can't tell you how excited I am to get this over with. So welcome, and you can state your words.
Sure,
okay?
sure. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Lori and Victor for hosting these candidate events and for being a pillar of the community as our bookstore. I wanted to start off with a quote that is actually 111 years old. And it is it has a lot of masculine pronouns. I apologize about that, but that's kind of the custom from a century ago. And the author of it does have a similar name to mine, but that's not why I chose it. But I think you'll find that it's still apropos given what we are experiencing today. It is not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or how the doer of deeds could have somehow done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, and who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms and the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement. At the worst, if he fails, at least he fails daring greatly. Okay, that's all I had to say. So with that, I'd like to open up for questions. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Who said that quote?
So there's an easy answer to that question. There's a harder answer to that question. I'm going to give you the harder answer, which is I'm not going to tell you. I want everyone to find a book in this bookstore that has a quote in it. There's probably several. Buy the book, read it, right? And you can even buy the biography of the author who wrote that. And then go down the block a little ways and buy a croissant at L'Expérience Paris and discuss the book with a friend. That's what civil civic discourse is. And oh, by the way, the question was who said the quote? Sorry. But that's what civil civic discourse is. We need to get back to talking to each other and enjoying reading the same things and thinking and being in the same space with each other. And I realize that talking online is faster, but talking in person is the way that democracies worked for 100 years, 200 years. So, I'm not going to tell you who said it. I give you a hint. He had a similar name to mine, and it was 111 years ago. But if you look up the man in the arena, you should be able to find it. All right, who else has a question? Hi, Carolyn, go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering if you can share your views about the sort of worldwide issue of homelessness. And, how does that come down to Mercer Island as well, yeah,
so the question
on that.
Yeah. So the question was if I could share my views on the worldwide issue of homelessness and how it comes down to Mercer Island, how it affects us and what we can do about it. So thank you for recognizing that it is a worldwide issue. It's not a Seattle issue or a Mercer Island issue or even a regional issue, but it's something that we face in North America and in Europe, in Asia, it's in Australia. It's something that is a global phenomenon. It's more accentuated in areas that have economic centers, like Seattle, for example. But we need to develop a coalition of the public sector, the private sector, and nonprofits and faith-based organizations to work together towards addressing the root causes and to identify how we're going to work our way out of the current situation that we're in. One analogy I like to use is that if you want to empty a bathtub, you don't just open the drain. You also have to turn off the spigot, right? So yes, we've got a lot of people who are currently homeless, and we want to help them by identifying root causes of their problem and giving them drug treatment if they're addicted to drugs, or help with mental illness, or medical care if they're just disabled and can't get a roof over, they can't earn a living to get a roof over their heads. But we also have to look at what's the water coming into the tub. What are people who are what's causing people to become homeless? How do we prevent new folks from becoming homeless? How do we provide affordable housing? The City of Mercer Island is a founding member of ARCH, which is a regional coalition for housing, 13 cities in the east side. And we give money from our general fund every year to ARCH. And ARCH is putting together projects, including a 92-bed facility that's going to be between Factoria and Eastgate that will be supportive housing. They're also building, I think it's a 467-unit workforce housing in Totem Lake, which is about the spigot, right? This is about providing housing that people can afford to live in so that they don't become homeless in the first place. And they're also building a 100-unit facility in Bothell that is going to be for senior affordable housing, so that as people later in life have a fixed income and they have rising medical bills, that they are at less risk of suddenly becoming homeless because of those that financial divergence between those two things. And ARCH has actually been around for a long time, since '92. And so there are lots of different developments on the east side. The three that I just mentioned are ones that are coming up soon. And there's also, I should mention about homelessness, a regional homeless authority from King County that just formed, that Mark Dines was just selected as the leader of that. And there's several different regional cities and organizations that are starting to align around, let's have a common vision on this, so that we can have collective action on it. Does that answer your question, Carolyn?
Yeah, I just wondered, how is Mercer Island, are we a big contributor to this, and are we doing enough?
So the question, or follow-up question was, are we a big contributor to this, and are we doing enough? Last year, Mercer Island gave $35,000 of its general funds to ARCH. That's less than a latte per person on the island. We can do a lot better than that. We're an affluent community and a community that cares, and we can do better than that. And recently, Ed Holmes, our police chief, reached out and established connections with Sophie's Way and with the Congregations for the Homeless, so that when a Mercer Island resident becomes homeless, or when someone who's already homeless finds themselves on Mercer Island, we have a way of connecting with them and approaching them without it necessarily being an office, an armed and uniformed officer, but it can be someone who perhaps can make a first contact in a way that can have a good conversation with the individual. Does that answer your question, Carol? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go into the environment.
Yeah.
I know that's one of your priorities, environmental sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So and I know we now have a full-time sustainability group.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. So lots of things will come up because we've got lots of options with sustainability. How will you decide which of the what criteria will you use to not only help select sustainable programs, but to also evaluate?
So the question was, for environmental programs, environmental sustainability programs that are suggested to the city, what methodology should we use to decide and prioritize between those particular programs, right?
Right.
So it just so happens that I do a very similar thing for my day job as a portfolio manager for the City of Seattle's IT department. We have 34 departments in the City of Seattle that want this much IT work, and we have money for this much, and we have people for that much, right? And so every year, actually every quarter, we get together the representatives from all, or I oversee a cabinet of people, that representatives of leaders from the 34 departments, to decide upon what is our criteria for this, and how do we prioritize these projects? How do we, I bumped the microphone, sorry. How do we decide what's the highest priority thing in the city, what's second priority in the city, et cetera? And it took us a while to develop criteria for doing that. Now, in prioritizing environmental projects, we want to be looking at there are three different factors that come to mind. One is the impact if the program is successful. And another one is the penetration, meaning how many people are already doing this, how many, or is it something that no one's really thought of doing so far? And the third thing is the probability of its success, right? So you want something that has a high probability of success, and you want to have something that has high impact, but that has a low penetration, right? So if it has a low penetration, let me give an example. So converting from incandescents to LEDs, right? It's going to have a high impact in that it can lower the amount of energy that it's used. There's a high probability that people will actually do it, but it's already got a high penetration. You go out to the store and you look for incandescent light bulbs, you won't find many. The switch has already happened, right? So that wouldn't be something to prioritize, right? But if you can find one that has the high probability, the high impact, and low penetration, those are the ones that you should prioritize doing first. There's no shortage of ideas on different projects that we can work on for doing sustainability or environmental sustainability on the island. And we don't have to choose just one. We can do several of them in parallel, but there are limits to the resources, right? You're not going to be able to do all of it. You're going to have to figure out what are the resources you can apply and then prioritize based on those criteria to figure out which ones to do. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Cool. Who else has got a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for chatting with us today. Thank you guys for doing this for the last one series. I'm sure the millions of people watching. I have two quick questions actually, if I could. One is, what skills and experience do you bring to the city that will ensure long-term financial management, which is a big discussion we're having now about our finances. The second is, what comprehensive plans or amendments do you think the city needs to consider in that context, or really any context? So what's your skills and experience that will ensure long-term financial management, and what skills do you have to make that?
Okay, so repeating the question, there's a two-part question. The first question is, what skills do I bring to the city in terms of helping with the long-term financial management of the city? Make sure I'm facing towards the microphone over here. And the second question was, what comprehensive plan amendments would I suggest that we make in the city? And I'll take the first question first. So as far as managing the finances for a city, I do a lot of this in my day job as a portfolio manager at the city of Seattle. And the biggest challenge with managing the finances is managing the expectations of the different departments. Because again, everyone wants this much, and we are only going to end up doing what we have the people to do unless we can get more people to do that. And so making sure that everyone realizes what our capabilities or what our capacity is based on the resources that we have is a key element to that. And the other skill that I bring is the 4 years of experience I have on the Planning Commission, collaborating with 6 other commissioners to build a consensus around what we are going to recommend back to the council. And we don't always reach consensus. Sometimes it is a majority vote. But working together to try and identify where do we have common ground and how can we build a solution out from there in order to come up with policy that works for the rest of the city. And as far as the second question about the comprehensive plan amendments I would like to see, there's one that I proposed for this year. It's actually a 2-part proposal, which involves updating the bicycle and pedestrian plan to include how we're going to integrate bicycle and pedestrian transportation with our light rail. The plan that we currently have is over 11 years old and did not contemplate the arrival of light rail. And we really need to get that updated right away because light rail is going to be here in about a year. And we need to start incorporating the changes. The other part of the comprehensive plan amendment that I submitted for this year has to do with the frequency of update of the bicycle and pedestrian plan. Because Mercer Island is going to continue to evolve over the decades. And so my proposal in the comprehensive plan amendment is to every 8 years revisit that and make sure that we are keeping that up to date. There's another comprehensive plan amendment that I haven't written up yet, but that the city needs, which is that we need an element in our and a policy in our comprehensive plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Currently, it's not there. And because it's not there, the city is not able to spend a lot of time focusing on as setting diversity, equity, and inclusion goals and actually improving the level of support for contracting in minority-owned businesses and also in helping with housing. So it's something that when I talked to Jessie Bond about what are some things we really need, that's one of the things she recommended, saying we need a comprehensive plan element in there in order to enable the city to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was a little surprised to hear that it wasn't in there, but because we have so much in there around affordable housing and other element or other related topics. But she's right that we don't have that in there yet. So does that answer your question? Unless there's a question I can ask for you guys. Don't be shy. Yes, David.
So how can the city and schools work better together moving forward?
So the question was, how can the city and the schools work better together going forward? So the city council and the school board meet on a regular basis to discuss how the city and school board interact. And there are like 11, I think, interlocal agreements between the city and the school board having to do with paying for counselors, having to do with maintenance of the sports fields, which the city does, having to do with the use of the gas pumps in the bus barn. So the city vehicles can refuel at the bus barn rather than paying retail cost for gas. And there's several other interlocal agreements between the two, but making sure also that as the schools need to be remodeled and redesigned because every building on the island needs replacement every 50 or so years, then looking at opportunities of what can the city do to help with traffic flow near the schools? What can the city do to provide better utilities to the school as we are getting to the point where most of the houses on the island use heat pumps, or when we get to the point where we have most of them using heat pumps and where everyone suddenly has electric vehicles in their garage, we're going to have a lot more electricity usage, especially on a cold night in January when everyone's trying to recharge their cars and heat their houses. And so we're going to need a new, we're going to look at our electrical infrastructure and identify, do we need to significantly change and beef up the infrastructure? Does that give us an opportunity to bring new solutions to the schools in terms of what they need in terms of their energy supply or in terms of getting wires underground, getting other things that can make improvements for the schools? Because they use our infrastructure and utilities just like everyone else in the island. Does that answer your question, David?
Yes, thank you. And could you also speak to the mental health counselors?
Yes, so yes, if I could also speak to the mental health counselors. So there's currently an interlocal agreement between the city and the schools relating to the funding of mental health counselors, where the city provides, I think it's about 90% of the overall funding, and the school district provides about 10%. And the funding that the city provides comes primarily from the operations of the thrift shop, which in the last 18 months has been interrupted by the pandemic, which caused some shocks in the system when the thrift shop had to just shut down because it wasn't safe to operate in the pandemic. Then the $2 million gross that the thrift shop was generating for youth and family services was suddenly not there. the Youth and Family Services Foundation came to the rescue with their funds, and then the federal government recovery program, or ARPA as it's called, came to the rescue, but also that was one-time funds. So long-term, we need to identify what is a recurring source of revenue that we can build for our youth and family services who provide the mental health counselors in schools, as well as senior counseling and the food bank and family services. There are many different services they provide in addition to the mental health counselors in the schools. And how can we make sure that we're not as reliant upon one entity like the thrift shop that could be interrupted by a pandemic or an earthquake or a fire or something along those lines? Does that answer your question? Yes, Eric.
Yeah, Ted, you've been on the island for quite a while, and with that perspective, as you think ahead 10 years, what will you be working towards maintaining and keeping, and what would you like to see change within the next 10 years?
So the question was, since I've been here on the island for a lot of years, what would I like to see maintained or built or restored in the next 10 years? So yeah, I moved here when I was 13. So I've been here almost continuously for 40 years. I had to move away for 3 years when I was in my early 20s until I could afford a house. And I have benefited directly from the wonderful services here on Mercer Island, the excellent schools that we have, the safety that we have, and the other services within the city government that we have. I want to make sure that we maintain our existing services and that we fully fund our existing services and that we restore those services that got shut down during the pandemic. We had, oh gosh, I think it was about 12% of our staff, the city, don't quote me on the percentage, but we had a large percentage of our staff that got let go as part of the pandemic. And we thought we meaning the city, I wasn't part of the council at the time, but I also from my armchair thought the same thing, that we were entering into possibly an economic depression, and there was a lot of wanting to cut back. Turns out that the revenues didn't actually go down as much as we thought they would. People still paid their property tax. We actually had an increase in sales tax. And so now we're sitting on a surplus, and we're trying to hire back, or at least hire into the open spots. A lot of people that we let go of jobs elsewhere. But we're finding it hard to restaff. It's a competitive job market out there. And we have a policy saying that we have to offer at the median of the salary spectrum. And so those cities that can offer in the third quartile or the fourth quartile are outbidding us. So we need to look at giving possibly more flexibility to our city manager when doing hiring. I'm not saying to offer more for everybody out there, because I don't want to overpay for our services, just like nobody else wants to overpay for our services here in the island. But where we have a critical shortage, we should look at having some flexibility in the hiring process. So there's like example is the recreation department. Our parks department essentially was disbanded, and there were the parks maintenance people were moved into public works. We're now bringing that back, and we need to restore our recreation department back to the way it was, so we can have our community center open again, and so that we can have our recreation program started again. And it's primarily the staffing that is the challenge in getting there. I'm confident we will get there, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take some flexibility. Does that answer your question?
Well, there was a second part too, which is what would you work towards changing?
What would I work towards changing? Is the follow-up question that he's asking. I think that we need to have a greater emphasis on the environmental sustainability If we're going to get to 2030 and a 50% reduction of our greenhouse gases, it's 2021. So we need a year by year plan. It's time to stop talking about it and start walking, right? So we need to have a plan that has annual goals that allows us to measure how do we do and what do we need to adjust in order to get to 50% reduction by 2030. That's going to require a lot of changes across the board, not just within the city government. I'm not just talking about the car fleet within the city and changing light bulbs in the city buildings. I'm talking about the rest of us in the community and providing incentives for transitioning from natural gas to heat exchange or to electrical heat exchange. And transitioning, we don't need to encourage people to switch to electric vehicles. They're coming. All of the car manufacturers are already transitioning to electric vehicles. But we need to make sure that as new houses get built, they've got an EV plug in the garage, which is a state requirement, but we need to get that into our code. We also need to make sure that multifamily units have EV plugs for 10% with the ability to grow to 20%. So that's one of the things we need to change, is more of an emphasis on environmental sustainability, and also more of an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I graduated in the class of 1986 from Mercer Island High School. And I went to, Mercer Island was then and still is today about 84% white. And I went to a college that was 54% white. And I learned in a hurry the value of diversity. I had roommates that were people of color and people of different nationalities. I had resident advisors. I had professors. I had people that I was looking to for advice on classes who were people of color and people from different races. And I realized that that is what is the norm. That is what is more normal out there in the world. We need more diversity on the island. We need to encourage that. It starts with more diversity of housing, so that we have more ability for people to be able to join us here on Mercer Island, and then celebrating that diversity. That is something that's going to require conscious effort and leadership from our city council and policies that help encourage that. Does that answer your question?
I have a question online.
Yeah.
Melinda is asking, I know that Ted has been walking the island to talk to members of the community. I'm wondering what he's learned that has surprised him and whether it's changed any of his perspectives.
Do you want me to repeat the question, or you're close enough to the mic that could be heard?
You might want to paraphrase
Okay.
it if you want.
So I think the question was from the walking that I've done on the island and the doors that I've been knocking on, what have I heard that surprised me, and how did that change my perspective?
Has it changed?
It hasn't changed my perspective. So yes, I have knocked on over 2,500 doors in the last 7 months here on the island. I thought, having lived here on 40 years on the island, that I knew half the people on the island. I did not. I realized that there's a lot of the people on the island I'd never met before. What surprised me is just how kind people are and how much people really wanted to talk. I was expecting about 20% of the doors to open and only 10% of them to be conversations. And it was more than double that. I think I had over 48% of the doors have actually opened, and about 23 or 24% have been conversations. Maybe it's because it's a pandemic and more people are home. I don't know. But I haven't had anyone slam the door at me. I haven't had anyone shout at me or sick the dogs after me. I mean, I met a lot of dogs. I carry a bag of dog treats in my pocket, but everyone is kind. Everyone wants to talk. They're polite. This is the true character of Mercer Islands. And I shouldn't say it's surprising for me, because I had a feeling that once you're actually talking to someone one-on-one, that people really would be interested and want to talk about local issues. But I was girding myself, getting ready for the difficult conversations, and I found that even when there are people that I know I had differing opinions on, they were still nice. That's the way the Mercer Islanders are. So I love that aspect. it's something I really look forward to every day that I go out walking precincts, is getting to meet people I haven't met before. Has any of it changed my perspective on things? I think one of the things that changed is that I have learned to not pretend to be the smartest person in the room, that there are a lot more ideas out there and that we as a community know a lot more than any particular individual knows. I want to be more of a collector and hear from people what they would like to see and what makes sense, and then do some research on my own as well to make sure that I'm corroborating evidence and making sure that the facts line up. But then working with the ideas that I collect and some that I come up with on my own to help to build legislation that works for everyone on the island. And some call it the jury effect, that the more people you get, when you get a bunch of people together, you actually get a better decision than just one alone. But gosh, when you have 25,000 people that are contributing ideas, it's amazing how many ideas come up, some of which are very simple. I heard one person suggest, why not just have kiosks at the train station to tell people about the businesses that are here on the island? You're going to be standing on a train station for a few minutes waiting for the train. I mean, why not have kiosks that show you about what are the businesses here? Because when you come back out of the train station at night, assuming we get back to commuting, we're not all telecommuting forever. It would be nice to know about the different shops so that we can try them out. And instead of just going to the one that we happen to know that might be across the water or somewhere else. But I mean, it's a great idea and doesn't sound very hard to implement too. So yeah.
So what would be your strategy for getting information from the community?
So the question is, what is the strategy for getting information from the community? There are multiple ways to do that. I've seen, of course, there's the way that's built into each council meeting of appearances, where an individual, anyone can come to the city council and have 3 minutes to speak directly to the entire council. There's also collecting information through people sending it through email or people calling us. I know that several of the council members have started a council member Facebook page where they talk about the issues that are coming up for the council meeting and ask people for input on it. Just trying to leverage the different mechanisms that are currently available out there, but also going out and meeting people in the community and visiting the different groups to hear about what is important. One of my English teachers from high school, Pat Brayman, when I first said I was thinking about running for office, had a suggestion that had frankly not occurred to me yet, which was to reach out to the faith-based organizations on the island and ask, what are the people in your congregation saying, and maybe even get an opportunity to come talk to them. And leveraging the different organizations that and associations already exist on the island to be kind of these collectors of ideas, and making sure that we're not trying to make stuff up on our own on council, but that we can leverage some of that. Does that answer your question? And by the way, I as I've been getting these questions, I've been answering it looking at the camera.
Okay.
I hope you guys are okay with that. I'm not making eye contact with the person who's asking the question.
That's what everyone does.
Oh, good. Okay. I have two hands up. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, so what do you think are the biggest problems here on Mercer Island? In other words, what are the issues that really need to be solved that's right in front of us right now?
So the question was, what are the biggest problems on Mercer Island that we need to solve right now? I think one of the biggest problems that we are facing is the need to reach a point where we can stop being afraid of issues and actually start working on solutions for issues. There's there's a quote from someone whose biography I've read at least twice of the only thing to fear is fear itself. And if we are afraid of homelessness, then we'll never manage to find a solution to it. We have to be thinking about what are the things that we can do to be part of a regional solution to this, and how do we address some of the root causes of it. So I think that's one example of something that is a key issue that we need to address.
Problem on Mercer Island.
So I mean, it's not a major problem on Mercer Island. We have like 5 people that are homeless
So
as
that's
opposed
my
to
question.
50,000.
What's the major problems on Mercer Island? Not the world or region, just what's our problem?
I think the first thing I was trying to get to is not homelessness itself, but rather the fact that everyone's focusing on the fear rather than on the solution. So I think trying to get us away from talking about just the problem and talking about the solution to get out of the amygdala and into the neocortex, essentially. I think that I think one of the other things is there's been a push for outsourcing our fire department that was last year that did not succeed, but there's still some people that want to do that. The goal was to save money. I get it. I don't want to overpay for my services in the city either, but I think that compromising our safety to do it was not the right idea. And I don't think that it was really going to save us money, actually, the way that it was being structured. I think there are still members in the community who want to do that. I think making sure that we show our appreciation for our fire department. They literally save our lives. We don't want them to be worrying about saving their jobs. So I think that's another major issue that is still in front of us. Yep.
So since you were a kid, this area has exploded, right? Like we're now between 2 huge chunks of the metro area in Seattle. How do you think about our place in the region and how we react to that?
So the question is, the region has grown a lot over the last few decades, like Seattle and Bellevue increased significantly in population. And what is our position in that?
How do you think about our regional, taking advantage of the region, responsibilities we have in the region? How do we react to that?
So essentially you're asking me, how do we react to how we assume our responsibility in the region? Well, geographically, we are in islands. In every other way, we are not in islands. Socioeconomically, the water that comes out of your tap didn't fall out of the sky on the islands. It comes from the Cedar River watershed, and Seattle Public Utilities pumps it over through the East Channel Bridge. The power that is powering the lights above us and that's keeping this computer running right here didn't come from windmills here on the islands. It comes from power sources elsewhere. We need to get them cleaner energy, by the way. And we are in an urban area that is growing very quickly. As the state of Washington does not have an income tax, there is continual growth coming to the area. And we knew this was coming. Back in 1990, the state passed something called the Growth Management Act that requires that the urban areas that are going to be receiving a lot of the people that are moving to the state have and accommodate a certain amount of growth. We have, like other cities in the area, been receiving what I call quotas of growth, a certain number of dwelling units and a certain number of jobs. And I think initially it was just dwelling units and they added the jobs, I think, a bit later as the requirements. And the Mercer Island developed from 1940 when the bridge opened to about 1978 is when we were pretty much fully built out. And so when in 1990, we suddenly started getting these quotas saying you have to take on this much additional growth, we were trying to figure out where do we put it. A lot of people don't know this, but Mercer Island actually used to be 2 cities. So from 1960 to 1970, the area that I'm sitting in right now that was, it's called the town center, was a city. It was called the town of Mercer Island. It has its own mayor and its own city council. And then the rest of the island around it, this big kind of donut around it, was called the city of Mercer Island. It had its own mayor and city council. And so the city of, or the town of Mercer Island had a different identity, a different focus. It was focused on commercial services and retail and multifamily dwelling units. The rest of the island, with a few exceptions, like the South Shopping Center and the area over by City Hall, were focused on single family. And although the two cities did merge together in 1970, and we've been one city ever since, they've still had different and distinct identities and different characters. And so in 1990, when the Growth Management Act passed, the city council at that time decided that it made sense to focus the growth in town center, where there was the character was already about multifamily, and where there was a better ability to accommodate that growth. So that's when we created the zoning that essentially allows for 5-story, 4-story, 3-story buildings. And it took a while until like 2005 before it actually started coming to fruition and seeing some of that constructing. And recently, there's a development called the High Capacity Transit Group, which is a group of 34 cities or communities around the Puget Sound area that are receiving high capacity transit stations. So we are one of them. And the HCT group, or High Capacity Transit Group, meets and can trade essentially their growth. They are given a certain amount of growth that they have to accommodate, but they don't have to accommodate it equally. And so recently we were able to, like a year or two ago, we were able to identify that there are certain communities that wanted more of the growth, like Shoreline wanted more of the growth. There are certain communities like Mercer Island that didn't want as much growth. And we were able to accommodate that. We were able to find, the HCT group was able to find a way to meet those quotas without our numbers keep going up. So we have a better, a more manageable plan now than what was there before the HCT group formed. I must admit, I had my doubts when the HCT group first formed. I thought more growth is coming, and this is how they're going to send it. But I didn't realize that we're going to be able to have the trade-offs that are in our favor as a result of that. So I think the original question was, what is our role in these regional groups? I think that we need to play an active role in this. We need to collaborate with the rest of the region, identify what our role, what we need to contribute to that, but also how to preserve and represent the true interests of the islands in that, to ensure that we have the quality of life that I've been able to benefit from for 40 years, and that I want future generations to want to benefit from as well. Does that answer your question? Yep. Yeah.
Hey, but, well, take over from that, you know, they always say that the plans to arrive with the first shot is fired. And I want to write down that fear itself.
Yes.
In 2 years, the light rail will come.
Mhm.
How fixed is this plan, and how much of a change will the light rail bring? That seems to me will make Mercer Island an even more desirable place to live. Connection with those two urban centers.
Mhm.
You talk about this plan, is that locked in stone, or will things happen when the light rail starts running? And how should we prepare for it?
Okay, so if I can summarize the question, I think you're saying that the light rail is coming soon, and how cast in stone are those plans, and what are the changes that are likely to occur, and what should we do to accommodate that? Is that fairly summarized question?
Better than what I said.
That's
That's why you're running.
I moved here when I was 13. And so from birth to age 12, I was in South Seattle near Seward Park. I remember every time that we would drive downtown for a family event or something like that, we'd drive by these bridges to nowhere, right? There's this area around the intersection between I-90 and I-5 where there were these double-decker freeways that you couldn't get onto on either ends. It was like this 40 maybe 100-foot long segment that was just sitting up there in the middle of nowhere. And I remember as a kid asking my parents, what is that? Why did we build that? And I remember it was either mom or my dad mentioning to me that, well, sometimes we as a society can't agree on what we want things to look like. And we get started on something and then we have to stop and we have to think about, what are we going to do? That particular segment of freeway that I'm talking about is now part of the I-90 exit that gets you to the stadiums. And so it did eventually get used. So the Sound Transit Station that we're going to have here in about a year and a half, 2023, we have needed this for generations. Our whole region has needed mass transit for a long time. And I'm a strong supporter of Sound Transit. And I'm very much looking forward to riding the train myself when I get back to a regular commute instead of telecommuting. And it is going to be a significant change for Mercer Island, but not as significant as a lot of people think. We have had buses going across the north end of the island for decades. It's not something that's new. The traffic of the number of people coming across and getting off of a bus and onto the train, that'll be different, right? That's also an opportunity because as those people come home, they're going to have full wallets and empty stomachs, and they're going to be looking for a place to get groceries for dinner before getting into their car and driving to wherever the home is here on the east side. They're going to be looking, they're probably going to have some dry cleaning. They're going to need to, they'll be like, oh, and there happens to be a hardware store. And before you know it, they're shopping in all the stores in town center. There's a big opportunity in having a lot of people exchange between either a bus and the train or a car and a train here on the island. I think also it gives us an opportunity to use some of the impact and settlement money that we have received from Sound Transit to build more parking. A lot of people know that in the 2017 settlement, which we saw some things we disagree with Sound Transit about, we're still in court about that, but it did include a $10 million impact fee settlement that has a sunset clause on it. So we got to use it before it goes away. But we used $2 million of it to buy the Tully's property that we were looking at developing into commuter parking. There's more money that we could use to look at other developments in the area. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with the current lawsuit that's there. If there is some settlement being discussed, it's behind closed doors, not open to the public. I'm not on the council yet, so I wouldn't know if there is a settlement being discussed, but there may be more coming. So we need to look at how do we find a way to make the transit center something that enables more growth and prosperity in our town center. And there is also already a plan to have 2 officers stationed at the transit center so that we can be assured that it will be a safe transition or a place of transition between train and other vehicles. And we also need to look at how are we going to encourage non-motorized transit to and from the station? How do we allow people to get there on foot? How do we allow them to get there by a bicycle or the new electronic scooters or other ways that people can get there? Should we look at possibly using some of the settlement money to get electric vans to be able to get people to and from the station without using a parking space? There's a lot of different things that we could try to do in order to leverage this opportunity for the community. There are also some risks involved. The lawsuit I was referring to a moment ago involves the use of the North Mercer Way just north of the transit center, where the contract that Sound Transit signed with us back in 2017 promised that they would have a maximum of 15-minute turnaround for their buses. It's the end of the route, so the drivers need a chance to rest. And then they discovered that their contract with the union, the bus union, actually has it being an average of 15 minutes. So instead of having the buses just on the south side of North Mercer Way, they're going to have them on both sides of North Mercer Way. That's what the lawsuit is about. They promised it would just be on the south side and average or a maximum of 15 minutes. One thing a lot of people don't know is that these are hybrid buses, right? So when they get off the freeway, they've got a full battery. And so when they're idling, they're actually idling on battery power. So unless it gets really cold outside, so if they actually drain their entire battery in 15 minutes, there's not going to be a lot of diesel exhaust that's coming up. It's going to be on battery power. And they eventually plan on going to all electric. The last time I talked to Claudia Balducci about this, she's like, well, we got to actually find affordable buses out there that are electric. They don't have those mass produced yet. But the plan is to eventually get it to all electric as well. So that there will be, there's still a lot of a wall of metal on both sides of the street, which is why we are justified to be taking them to court about it. But people shouldn't be as concerned about the emissions from that because it's not like they're going to be idling on diesel. I guess one of the other things that I look forward to about the light rail is more personal. I work at the city of Seattle. I've been there as a portfolio manager for 4 years. And in the 3 years before the pandemic, I would ride the 550 bus every day. I would stand out in the rain and the wind and wait for the bus. And there sometimes would be a line of 25 people waiting to get on the bus. And I wouldn't necessarily get on the first one. And it was uncomfortable. It was cold. And I'm looking forward to being able to catch the train. Hopefully I won't have to wait multiple trains. Hopefully they'll have the capacity. They'll be able to get on the first one that comes. But at least it'll be in an area that is covered. It'll be in an area that is has hopefully less winds. I haven't actually been on the platform yet to see how well they managed the Bernoulli effect down there. But personally, I'm looking forward to riding the train. I think it'll be a more pleasant way to commute. I'm looking forward to going to Husky games on light rail rather than trying to find a way to get there by bus and by car. I think it'll be a net improvement for our community as a whole. So long answer, but did that answer your question? I'm sorry. Did that answer your question?
Answer mine too.
I have an online question. For you.
Yes, go for it.
From the Hay family. Why did you want to defeat the recent no camping ordinance, which expanded legislation from parks to parks and public spaces? Without this ordinance, how would you propose that we help people who are camping in public spaces? And would you work to repeal the no camping legislation if elected?
Okay, so there was an ordinance back in February of 2021 that was proposing to expand our existing legislation about no camping from just park spaces to essentially all public spaces on the island. I am not for camping in the parks. I don't think anyone on the island likes to see the human suffering that is associated with someone who's sleeping outdoors, even if they're in a tent, in the winter. It is something that we need to work with other agencies of government. We need to work with nonprofits, and we need to work with faith-based organizations in order to, in concert, find ways to help people that are suffering from not having a home in which to live. And we need to make sure that we are being compassionate about it, but we also need to make sure that we are finding the right line on people's liberties. That there are people from birth to age 18 that we call minors and who don't have the right to go out and do a lot of the things that an adult has. When people turn 18, they, generally speaking, get a lot more freedoms than they used to have. And we need to identify, are there some situations where a person is not able to make decisions for themselves? Where is that line? We have to be very careful about where we draw that line, because I mean, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the core of our Constitution. But we do need to look at that to make sure that we're not just saying, do what you want out there, but that we're also not saying anyone who's homeless is criminal, because that isn't fair. That's not the United States. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I always ask the question about your leadership. Do you have, and you've already answered much of that in your presentation, so thank you for that.
Okay.
But is there a book or professor that you would have used as a guideline for your leadership and management experience?
So the question, thank you, Doris. The question was, is there a book or a particular professor that I would identify as being highly influential in my leadership and management style or experience? Is that summarize the question? So I have a library at home, about 500 books. And I have read biographies of every president of the United States, as well as many business and social leaders of our times. And from each book that I read, I look for what are the decisions that this individual made during her or his lifetime that caused permanent positive change. And what were some of the results? In what context did it work? In what context did it not work? And how did they come to these decisions? And so I wouldn't say that there's one particular book or one particular individual that I kind of try to model as for my form of leadership. But I would say that I try to listen very carefully to the people that I work with, the people I represent, the people who are my stakeholders on an IT project, or the people that I'm trying to serve. I then try to piece together as complete a picture of what is happening and what needs to happen, and then try to build a compelling vision, something that the members of the group that I'm working with or the organization that I'm working with can find exciting and intriguing and give them a reason to get out of bed in the morning and want to build something that will last for years after that. And trying to keep a work-life balance as well during all this, and making sure that in addition to working hard and making a difference out there, that I get enough sleep, that I get enough time to get out in the woods and paint every now and then, and that I just get a chance to walk through the parks and breathe here on Mercer Island. And elsewhere in the Northwest area. It's important to find a way to stay connected with one's family and with one's community, as well as trying to make a difference in one's work. And making sure that I remember that I'm not always and rarely am the smartest person in the world or in the room. I want to be a collector, someone who listens and who is willing to change his mind if he hears evidence and data that proves that something's different than I thought it was. There's several people in the room who remember one of the issues back in 2018 that came before the Planning Commission, where I was originally all for it. And the more I heard from the neighbors of the project in question, the more I realized that what was being proposed wasn't ready yet. And that I was the only one who voted against that particular thing. I think you guys probably remember the thing I was talking about. And it did eventually get repealed. But I do think that ultimately we need to find solutions that work for everyone in the community, but we need to be open to changing our minds when we see evidence that shows that something's different than we thought it was. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a question online,
Yes.
Which said, I saw you doorbelling in my neighborhood, but you did not come to my door. How did you choose which house is the doorbell and why?
So, so there are over 10,000 doors on the island that,
Yeah.
oh yes, the question was, I saw you doorbelling in my neighborhood, but you didn't come to my door. And what was the mechanism that I used to decide which doors to knock on and why? So there are 10,000 or thereabouts doors in the neighborhood in terms of who has water bills. There are about 9,022 doors in the Mercer Island that have a registered voter behind the door. And getting to 2,500 doors in 7 months, I mean, that's about 300 a month or a little more than 300 a month. That's a lot of work. I've spent an entire years accumulation of vacation to knock on that many doors. There is no way I could get to all 9,000 doors. So if there's someone who would like to have me knock on their door, please send me an email and let's find a time to go take a walk in the park or have me just drop by and say hi. But I've had to be careful about making sure that I provide a representative sample of who's on the island, and making sure that I talk to people in every neighborhood and making sure that I'm familiar with what's going on out there. And please reach out if you'd like me to come by and chat with you.
We have about 4 minutes left. If there are any other questions that people have. Anyone?
Okay, I'm just kind of curious, when you were on the planning, your time on the planning commission,
Mhm.
what was like one of your very top things that you advocated for that you feel good about?
What was one of the top things that I advocated for in my 4 years in the planning commission that I feel good about? Well, there's been, I think I sat down at one point and made a list of what are all of the topics that we have covered in the planning commission. There were 32 of them. And so a topic usually comes to us at least 3 times, right? Once to kind of introduce us to the topic and get us familiar with the topic, and then we give the planning and the planning development department essentially some guidance as to what things to tell us more about next time, or what possible adjustments to make in the direction that they're going. And the second time they give us a second reading where we get a lot more detail about it. And the third time is usually the public hearing, where we have a potentially finalized version that we get feedback from the community on, and then the planning commission will deliberate on what adjustments we want to make to it before we take a vote on it. And we don't actually enact it into law. We don't have that authority. There's only one body in the city that has that authority, which is the council. So we're an advisory body to the council, and we send our recommendations up to the council, and they then do the same thing. They look at it, they decide whether they want to make adopt it as is, or whether they want to make little changes or tear it up and send it back to us with to completely redo. And so when I think about those 32 different topics that we went over over the past 4 years, is there one that I can say I feel the strongest about, or I feel like I'm most excited about? I guess probably almost all of them feel like they made a significant difference to the community. There's some that are more visible than others, like the annual comprehensive plan amendments are more visible, and the Shoreline Management Act was more visible, and the Critical Areas Ordinance was more visible. I think the one that I've been working on currently of getting the bicycle and pedestrian plan updated to reflect the coming light rail, and to get that also on a recurring basis reviewed so that every 8 years we get a refresh on it, so it never gets to being 11 years old, is probably the one that I'm most excited about currently. It's kind of hard to pick out one from the other 32 that we faced over the past 4 years and say that's the one that I'm proudest of. There's some that we spend a lot of time on. I guess the community facility zone is probably the one that was the biggest in terms of the number of hours that we spent both in the open public meeting with the full bank of the planning commission, and also in the subcommittee meetings. We were trying to work out the details on that. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I can really pick a favorite of all.
That's
those.
okay. That was a good example, though.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good example.
Well, I
Final question.
Yeah.
So we always close these out, and you've watched this.
Yes.
What is your spirit animal, or if you don't like that term, what is the animal you identify with
Yes, what is my spirit animal? So because I've been watching some of these other ones, I've been giving this question some thought. I chose the eagle. I like the eagle because it's something that has the big picture of what's going on, but an eye to detail to make sure that they're zooming in on the right thing. Yeah.
And thank you, everyone online. Thank you, everyone that came in here. We are done with the candidate series, and I hope you all go and vote. Thank you
Yes,
very
please vote.
much. Yes, thank you.
And support your bookstore.